Hello? The story we're about to share with you today takes place in Adachi Ward, one of the 23 special wards of Tokyo, the capital of Japan. This area is known as one of the most affordable districts in Tokyo, featuring not only numerous residential areas, but also thriving commercial zones and a well-developed university district. In the Senju Midoricho neighborhood of Adachi Ward, there stands a 3-story house that is home to a wealthy family. The homeowner, Takahashi Tokuhito, 55 years old, is the owner of a bar. His wife, Takahashi Nishimi, 52 years old, is a homemaker. The couple has a son and a daughter. Their eldest son, Takahashi Ichiro, 31 years old, lives with them. He is a company employee, known for his calm demeanor and filial respect for his parents. One evening, as he returned home from work as usual, he was suddenly confronted with a horrifying scene that would shock all of Japan, right in his own home. Next, let's dive into the details of this event together. It was Tuesday, January 16, 2024. At 8:30 p.m., Takahashi Ichiro finished work and headed home. He parked his car in the driveway in front of the house, turned off the engine, and got out. Glancing to the side, he noticed his father's car was parked nearby. That morning, before heading to work, his father had mentioned that he would take the car to be washed, but it seemed it hadn't been done yet. Initially, Ichiro thought his father might have forgotten, so he didn't think much of it and prepared to enter the house. However, the strange feeling he had moments before returned. Normally, at this time, his mother would be preparing dinner in the kitchen on the first floor, and he could hear sounds coming from the entrance. Yet, at that moment, the entire house was dark, eerily silent, with only the distant sound of dogs barking in the background. With a growing sense of unease, Ichiro entered the door code and pushed the door open. As he bent down to take off his shoes at the entrance, he reached for his slippers, but noticed faint traces of blood that had been wiped away on the floor. Startled, he immediately felt that something was terribly wrong. He quickly walked further into the house, calling out for his parents, but received no response. As he moved through the house, he saw more bloodstains in various spots. He continued upstairs to check the situation, but after searching all the rooms on the second and third floors, his parents were nowhere to be found. Growing increasingly anxious, he tried calling their phones, but both were turned off. Not knowing where his parents could be, he called his father's bar, only to be informed that his parents hadn't come in that day. Feeling even more alarmed, he then called his sister, but she also said she hadn't seen or heard from their parents that day. By this time, it was 8:50 p.m. Ichiro feared his parents had been kidnapped, so he immediately called the police. Upon receiving the report, the police arrived at the scene right away. They secured the area and preserved the crime scene. The police then questioned Ichiro, the eldest son of the homeowners. Ichiro explained that when he left for work at 8 a.m. that morning, his parents seemed completely normal. But when he returned home at 8:30 p.m., they had mysteriously disappeared. A thorough examination of the house revealed that everything was in its usual tidy state. There were no signs of forced entry, and no valuables were missing. However, both of his parents' cell phones were nowhere to be found. Investigators collected 10 blood samples from the floor and the knife. The tests quickly revealed that most of the blood at the scene belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi. However, DNA from an unknown man was also found on the floor and the knife. Based on the evidence found on the first floor, the police suspect that the Takahashi couple was attacked right at the entrance. The authorities believe the likelihood of the couple surviving is very low, and if they are alive, they are likely gravely injured. Nevertheless, finding them remains the top priority. Since no valuables were stolen, the police ruled out robbery as the motive. Given that the Takahashi family was well off, the police considered the possibility, as Ichiro had feared, that his parents might have been kidnapped. If that is the case, the kidnappers could call at any time. The police then checked the phone records of Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi, and the last known location of their phone signals was indeed at their home. The following day, Ichiro still hadn't received any calls from the kidnappers. This lowered the likelihood of a kidnapping. The police also reviewed surveillance footage around the Takahashi home to track the couple's movements on the day of the incident. The footage showed that Mr. Takahashi Tokuhito left the house at 1 p.m., and half an hour later, Mrs. Takahashi Nishimi also went out. Mrs. Takahashi returned home at 4:30 p.m. After that, they did not appear on any more surveillance footage. After further investigation, the police gathered some information about the missing individuals. First, Takahashi Tokuhito, 55, is currently running a bar and has been linked to some illegal activities near Nishiadai Station. The street where his bar is located has many similar clubs and bars, but Tokuhito's bar has been in business for over 25 years and is well known. Although the bar isn't large, it has a loyal clientele, mostly men around 50 years old. Mr. Takahashi and his eldest son jointly took out a loan of 37 million yen, equivalent to approximately $250,000, to purchase the house in Senju. Although there was some financial pressure, it was still within their means. There are rumors that the true owner of the house is the eldest son, and knowing his son didn't have much money, Mr. Takahashi shouldered the majority of the loan. Mr. Tokuhito often went out at night and was less active during the day. As a result, those who knew him were mostly customers of the bar. People generally described him as good-looking and kind-hearted. If a customer missed the last train home at night, he would sometimes stay with them until morning. Aside from his work, his greatest passion was cars. The 2 cars at the house were both purchased based on his interests. Next is the wife, Takahashi Nishimi, 52, a homemaker. She is quite shy and not very social, but she's always polite to everyone. In the eyes of their neighbors, the couple was seen as affectionate and kind. Although Mr. Takahashi ran a bar associated with some illegal activities, they never went out of their way to cause trouble for others. Therefore, the incident didn't seem to be the result of a business dispute. After gathering basic information about the missing couple, the police shifted their suspicions toward the person who reported the case, Takahashi Ichiro. Someone informed the police that they had seen him arguing with his parents about money, and it seemed that he had borrowed a significant amount from his father. The police suspected that Ichiro might have harmed his father over money, and his mother, having witnessed the whole thing, was also silenced by him. Ichiro was furious at these accusations. He admitted to borrowing money from his father, but he insisted that their father-son relationship was strong and the house loan was still being paid off. He said he could never be so cruel as to harm his parents. Several of Ichiro's colleagues provided an alibi for him, stating that he was at work all day on the day of the incident and didn't leave the office until he went home. As a result, he was cleared of suspicion. Upon reviewing the surveillance footage from the day of the incident, the police noticed something unusual. Shortly after Ichiro left the house that morning, a man and a woman appeared nearby. They were both wearing masks, and they weren't seen leaving until later in the afternoon. After leaving, they discarded something in a nearby trash bin. Based on their appearance and clothing, the pair seemed highly suspicious. The investigators immediately searched the trash bin. Eventually, they found the package that the 2 individuals had discarded. When they opened it, they discovered several blood-stained clothes inside and quickly sent them to the forensic lab for analysis. The Takahashi couple had not appeared on surveillance footage after 4:30 p.m. that day. With kidnapping ruled out, the possibility arose that they had been murdered and their bodies hidden. Therefore, the police began meticulously searching the surrounding areas, focusing on the vicinity of the Takahashi home. However, they found no evidence of any freshly dug earth nearby. On the 3rd day after the incident, the Takahashi couple was still missing. At 6:01 p.m., the police were carefully searching every corner of the Takahashi house. When one officer reached the first-floor hallway, he suddenly noticed a strange odor. He followed the scent to a particular room. On the left side of the room was a bathroom, on the right was a toilet, and in the middle was a sink area. The officer looked around carefully, and although the room appeared normal, the strange smell persisted. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a gap beneath the floor. This design is not uncommon. Some houses are built with such spaces for storing items or for easier access when repairing certain fixtures. Realizing there was storage space under the floor, the officer lifted the flooring and was met with the sight of 2 large cabinets. Sensing that something was seriously wrong, He quickly called his colleagues over to assist. After opening the two cabinets, the police were horrified to discover that each one contained a body. Both victims had multiple stab wounds to their chests. The police immediately notified Ichiro. When he saw what was inside the cabinets, his body began to tremble uncontrollably. His faint hope that his parents might still be alive was shattered. The victims were indeed his mother and father. The autopsy results revealed that Mr. Tokuhito had over 10 stab wounds, while Mrs. Nishimi had 8. Their time of death was determined to be January 16th, 2 days earlier. Ichiro was devastated by the news. He took a leave of absence from work, focusing solely on finding the killer to seek justice for his parents. That same day, the investigation made a significant breakthrough. The blood on the clothes found in the trash bag, which had been sent for testing earlier, was confirmed to belong to the Takahashi couple, matching the blood at the entrance of the crime scene. The police determined that the man and woman seen in the surveillance footage were closely linked to the crime. The police then took images of the couple to Mr. Tokuhito's bar to ask the staff if they recognized them, but none of the employees knew who they were. Ichiro was also called in to review the surveillance footage. Although the man and woman were wearing masks and hats that obscured their faces, Ichiro immediately recognized the woman on the screen. She was his ex-girlfriend, Morales Hazel Alpavisa, a Filipina who spoke fluent Japanese. Ichiro suddenly remembered that on the day of the incident, he had spoken with his ex-girlfriend on the phone. That afternoon, Morales unexpectedly called him. They had broken up not long before, so the call left Ichiro feeling a bit puzzled. However, since it was during his lunch break at work and wouldn't interfere with his job, he answered the call. Morales said she wanted to get back together, but Ichiro made it clear that their relationship was over and suggested they could remain friends in the future. After hearing that, Morales said nothing and hung up. Ichiro then returned to work. Around 5 p.m., he called Morales back, but she didn't answer. So he texted her, asking if she was still working. Half an hour later, Morales replied with a single sentence: "It's over now." Sensing something was off, the police asked Ichiro more about their relationship. Ichiro explained that 3 years ago, he had met Morales by chance. She was 1 year younger than him, and their relationship gradually evolved into a romantic one. During that time, he often took her out on drives. Later, Morales frequently cited financial difficulties as a reason to borrow money, and Ichiro generously gave her the funds she asked for. Ichiro also mentioned that he had introduced Morales to his parents. At first, they liked her, but when Ichiro proposed the idea of marrying Morales and expressed his hope that his parents would contribute financially, they immediately refused. His parents had discovered that Morales owed their son around 600,000 yen, approximately $4,000, and they strongly opposed him continuing the relationship with her. Mrs. Nishimi, in particular, was very firm, demanding that Morales repay the money immediately. Under the strong opposition from his parents, Ichiro broke up with Morales, but she didn't want the relationship to end and was unwilling to return the money. At the time of his parents' disappearance, Ichiro believed that the situation between him and Morales had nothing to do with the case, so he didn't mention it to the police initially. However, after hearing Ichiro's latest statement, the police began to suspect that Morales might have sought revenge against his parents. The police reviewed additional surveillance footage from nearby cameras and discovered that Morales' apartment was only 450 meters away from Ichiro's home, about a 10-minute walk. However, following the incident, Morales abruptly moved out of her apartment, and no one knew where she had gone or could provide her with an alibi. A friend of Morales mentioned that on the evening of January 17, 2024, he saw her at a convenience store. She was frantically searching for something on the shelves, muttering, "Bandages, bandages." The friend tried to greet her, but she didn't seem to notice. After some time investigating, the police eventually tracked down Morales and found her at an inn in Fukushima Prefecture. In the early hours of January 19th, Morales was arrested at the inn. When the police asked her where she had been on the day of the incident, she claimed that she had been helping a Filipino friend find a place to live and denied any involvement in the case. The police believed that Morales didn't act alone. Even if she had a weapon, it would have been nearly impossible for her to overpower two victims on her own. Her accomplice was likely the man seen discarding the clothes in the surveillance footage. The autopsy results showed that the victim's wounds were quite deep, with some being fatal, particularly those near the heart, injuries that Morales likely couldn't have inflicted by herself. 2 days later, the police located the man believed to be Morales' accomplice. Surveillance cameras captured images of him purchasing 3 cans of beer at a convenience store in Tsuchizaki City at 10:20 p.m. on the night of the incident. He was wearing a hat pulled low over his forehead and a mask, with his right hand bandaged. The man was identified as Dela Cruz Brian Jefferson Risen, a Filipino national. The police quickly apprehended him. After his arrest, he couldn't withstand the pressure and confessed everything to the police. Dela, 33 years old, had known Morales since childhood. In July 2023, he came to Japan as a trainee and worked for a construction company. He lived in a small apartment in Tsuchizaki City. Besides Morales and a few Filipino friends, he didn't know anyone else and led a mostly solitary life. 2 months before the incident, Dela and his girlfriend, along with Morales, had dinner at a barbecue restaurant to celebrate their reunion. Dela claimed he didn't know Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi at all and that the entire plan was Morales' idea. He was merely assisting her. On the other hand, Morales continued to remain silent. Despite her lack of cooperation, with Dela's confession, the sequence of events began to unfold. Morales had been observing the Takahashi family for a long time, learning their routines, and had even secretly entered their home several times. She reached out to Dela, her acquaintance, and laid out her plan. The two of them then prepared knives and plastic bags. At 8 a.m. on the day of the incident, Morales and Dela sneaked into the Takahashi house and hid in a room. Since Morales had previously been to the Takahashi home and knew the door code, the two were able to enter without alerting Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi. Around noon, while hiding inside the house, Morales called Ichiro. This call might have been her final internal struggle, solidifying her resolve to carry out her plan. At 1 p.m., Mr. Tokuhito left the house and returned shortly afterward. Half an hour later, Mrs. Nishimi also left. Once she was gone, the two attackers quickly ambushed Mr. Tokuhito, resulting in his death. At 4:30 p.m., Mrs. Nishimi returned home. As soon as she stepped inside, she was ambushed by the two. Although she tried to resist, she couldn't overpower the attackers. After being repeatedly stabbed, she collapsed. Later in the afternoon, Ichiro called Morales, but she didn't answer because she and Dela were busy dealing with the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi, hiding them under the floor to delay their discovery. Together, they placed the bodies into plastic containers and concealed them in the storage space beneath the bathroom floor on the first floor. They took the Takahashi's phones, turned them off, but couldn't remember where they discarded them. By the time they finished hiding the bodies, it was 5:30 p.m. Only then did Morales respond to Ichiro's text. Little did Ichiro know that her message, "It's over now," had such a chilling significance. Afterward, Morales and Dela removed their blood-stained coats, did a quick cleanup, and wiped the blood off the floor using the clothes they were wearing. On their way out, they casually tossed the bloodied clothes into a nearby trash bin. What puzzled the police was why the two didn't strike immediately after sneaking into the house in the morning, but instead waited until the Takahashis left before taking action. However, both Morales and Dela refused to reveal the reason. One theory is that Morales wanted to wait for Mrs. Nishimi to return home so she could exact revenge on her for opposing Morales' relationship with Ichiro. Dela, as an accomplice, followed Morales' wishes and didn't act impulsively. Another possibility is that they were concerned that the noise might attract the attention of the neighbors, so they waited for a more opportune moment to carry out their plan. After the crime, Morales moved out of her old apartment and found an inn to hide from the police. During the struggle with Mr. Tokuhito, Dela injured his hand badly when it was cut by the knife. Afraid to seek treatment at a nearby hospital, he returned to his apartment in Tsuchizaki City and later sought care at a local hospital. However, Dela wasn't very adept at evading investigation. He had no real sense of being a fugitive, made only minimal efforts to conceal himself, and was caught on surveillance cameras when he went out to buy beer. On the other hand, through their investigation, the police learned more about Morales' background. In November 2017, Morales, then 23, came to Japan from the Philippines on a low-cost airline. With her youthful and attractive appearance, she landed a job as a receptionist at a bar. The bar primarily employed young women from the Philippines, just like her. This type of bar, catering mainly to foreigners, had been quite popular in Japan. Since 1998, however, entertainment venues employing foreign workers had come under strict scrutiny. Initially, Japan only issued permits for foreign performers to come to Japan to perform or work, but after numerous cases of people exploiting tourism visas to work illegally, the Japanese government intensified its inspections. However, if foreigners marry a Japanese citizen, they face far fewer restrictions. Not only do they have more freedom in choosing a career, but their residency period is extended, ranging from a minimum of 6 months to a maximum of 5 years. This is something many foreigners aspire to achieve. To secure a longer residency, Morales entered into a sham marriage with the son of the bar owner. Even though the bar owner's son already had a girlfriend, Morales and several other Filipino women at the bar also engaged in sham marriages with him to extend their stay in Japan. All of this took place before Morales arrived at the bar. Among the regular patrons was a 58-year-old wealthy man named Kaminsukasu, who frequently visited the bar. He was known to spend up to 1 million yen in a single night. People at the bar often saw Kaminsukasu sitting on the sofa, chatting under the dim lights, while Morales poured drinks for him. As their relationship grew closer, Kaminsukasu began buying her expensive gifts and taking her out on dates. He visited the bar 3 to 4 times a week. Despite having many customers, Morales was the top performer in the bar, which caused jealousy among the other girls. Morales was a typical Filipina who placed a high value on family. Her mother, stepfather, and younger sister all lived in the Philippines and largely depended on her for financial support. As Kaminsukasu spent more time with Morales, his feelings for her deepened. But one day, he unexpectedly discovered that Morales had posted wedding photos on social media, which left him feeling displeased and betrayed. Morales explained that it was merely a fake marriage to secure a longer residency, and their relationship soon returned to normal. At the bar, Kaminsukasu spent nearly 100 million yen, equivalent to about $680,000, with most of that amount going to Morales. However, Morales was unaware that this wealthy patron's fortune was as tainted as her sham marriage. In a separate case, Kaminsukasu and his associates were exposed in a land fraud scheme. In the fall of 2018, to evade capture, Kaminsukasu fled to the Philippines, where he was eventually arrested in December of that year. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison for fraud. As Kaminsukasu found himself in legal trouble, the bar where Morales worked also faced a crisis. The scheme involving Filipino women at the bar who sought to extend their residency through sham marriages was uncovered. 26 people were arrested in connection with the scam. The police even uncovered that the bar owner himself was involved in illegal financial activities, including a past involvement in a robbery. During the investigation into the sham marriages, Morales became pregnant. However, her nominal husband, the bar owner's son, doubted that the child was his and refused to take responsibility. The situation led to arguments, and the two eventually decided to divorce. Morales lost her job and had to return to the Philippines with her child. After the divorce, the bar owner's son never contacted her again. After these upheavals, Morales, then 25, worked at various Filipino bars in other areas such as Takadanobaba and Takanotsuka for an extended period. Adachi Ward, where Takanotsuka is located, has the highest concentration of Filipinos in Tokyo and is known as Little Manila. Her living conditions had significantly declined from what they once were, but Morales was accustomed to a lavish lifestyle and often borrowed money from colleagues or customers. Over time, Morales gradually withdrew from her bar work and began working as a nursing assistant at a hospital in Tokyo. Due to financial pressure, she was forced to downgrade her lifestyle and became more reserved. However, she still longed to return to the glamorous life she once had. In 2021, Morales met Ichiro, a man just a year older than her. Ichiro was cheerful, energetic, and generous. They quickly became a couple. Morales often borrowed money from Ichiro, and he never pressured her to repay it, which made her feel very comfortable. However, when they decided to get married, Ichiro's parents strongly opposed the union and insisted that she repay her debts. But she couldn't afford to do so. What frustrated her even more was that Ichiro sided with his parents and broke up with her. By January 2024, Morales was deeply in debt and finally reached her breaking point. She blamed Ichiro's parents for all her problems. She believed that if it weren't for their interference, she could have married Ichiro and resolved all her issues. But now, her life was in shambles. With these thoughts in mind, she sought out Della, an old friend, to help her carry out her vengeful crime against the couple. Although the motive for the crime was clear, during the investigation, both Morales and Della blamed each other. While Della's DNA was found on the murder weapon, this didn't rule out Morales' involvement. However, based on the evidence collected, it appeared that Della was the one who physically carried out the crime, with Morales playing a supporting role. When the media reported their arrests, many people who knew Morales expressed surprise. They described her as someone who seemed very normal, not like someone capable of committing such a heinous act. One woman mentioned that she regretted not lending Morales money, saying, "If I had lent her the money to help her with her immediate problems, maybe she wouldn't have been driven to such desperation." The case attracted significant attention within the Filipino community. Some criticized Morales and Della for tarnishing the image of Filipinos and negatively impacting others from the Philippines living in Japan. Morales' striking appearance was also a key factor that drew public interest. Some people have also looked into her relationship with Ichiro and believe that she still had lingering feelings for her ex-boyfriend. They argue that if she didn't, she wouldn't have continued to contact him after borrowing money. Furthermore, despite owing money to many people, she chose to exact revenge on Ichiro's parents. If her motivation was purely to resolve financial disputes, such extreme actions wouldn't have been necessary. Therefore, some speculate that her motive was likely tied to a complicated mix of love and hatred toward Ichiro. Despite the outside speculation, the police continued their investigation, hoping that Morales would eventually cooperate. 2 months after the crime, Morales and Della were charged with premeditated murder. As of now, the trial has not yet begun. What role Morales, who remained silent, actually played in this crime remains to be seen. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you don't want to miss any updates on this case, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.